Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciated that. I had visited a church this week, and they had used that for Thanksgiving as a reading, and I felt that was really, really appropriate as I was thinking about the sermon that I was going to give today. There is this sense where we are reminded during Thanksgiving to be grateful. It's pretty obvious. How many of you have the tradition around the Thanksgiving table that you say something you're grateful for? And when you said that thing you were grateful for, how many for you was that a happy, good experience that you shared, right? Thankful for your family, thankful for all the wonderful things that we have. And I know that that is wonderful, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to say that you appreciate your family, that you appreciate your friends, that you've had goodness during the year, that you're grateful for the food on the table and the hands that prepared it, because I will honestly admit those hands will never be mine. So I'm always grateful to those hands that prepared it. I know that there's a sense where we seek out the beauty in life. And as they shared, as Connor and Jackson read, there's a concept called Ubuntu. And really it sort of literally means I am because we are. That there's something indelible about us not living in isolation, but being a part of a community that shapes who we are. And I think often we're grateful for the goodness in that community. You can think about your favorite coach, your favorite pastor, your favorite teacher, the thing your parent did that encouraged you. But I think there's also a sense of trying to be grateful for those things that are out of our control. Now, one of the images today is the idea of a symphony. Now, we have some wonderful youth, and a few years ago when I first came here and we had hang time on Thursday nights from 8 till 10, it was a long night for me, there was sort of one of our kookier kids, I would say, and I had to tell him once to get out of the refrigerator. Okay, twice. But when I've asked him here to share music, and it's not Jackson, just so you're wondering, and it's not Connor, so I'm safely giving this story. When I've asked this person to share music, they play the viola, and they've shared their music here. And when I look and watch as this wonderfully kooky kid shares his music, his eyes are closed as he plays. And when I watched him play the first time here and he shared his music, it almost seemed that at the end of the piece, he opened his eyes and was like startled that you all were here. Like he'd been transported somewhere else. Because for him, music elevated his soul, transcended. It was a transcendent experience for him. It was something that moved him beyond himself, which is why he loved to play music, because I asked him about it. And he said there was something that connected him to some transcendent moment as he played his heart out. And that is a wonderful image of community, that notion that as we all are playing our instruments in community, we are part of a beautiful and wonderful symphony. That we play off each other, that we have these moments that lift us higher. That we feel the music as he did, and sort of everything fades away. And there's wonderful moments to be grateful for. You feel that way in your family, sometimes at work, sometimes in community, sometimes when you're singing in the choir. You have moments and you almost think, wait, I need to remember this. This is an indelible moment. This moment I'm so grateful for. Because when community works as it should in Ubuntu, it sounds like a beautiful symphony. It sounds to our ears like the perfect note. We're doing Animate. How many of you are in Animate or doing our Animate Adult Christian Education series? We have some high schoolers doing it as well. And when we were talking during the first week about God and our thoughts about God, one of our high school students and make no mistake, our high schoolers are far wiser than I am. Far wiser than I am. I get so much out of meeting with them. Described God as like the perfect note. The perfect sound. So think about all the images you have for God. Some have an elderly man with a beard. Some see God as the creator, maybe a easel, a painting. There's different ways in which we imagine who God is. And this high schooler described this way. Now, I asked for the details, and I will give you the details, but I know nothing of music, so I'm hoping this makes sense to people. The perfect note is the perfect fifth. Does that make sense to people? Is the perfect alignment of sound waves to where they intersect in the least amount of places on those waves. It makes the smoothest and nicest sound to our ears. It's not necessarily two specific notes, but the distance between those notes that makes a perfect fifth. An example would be a C and a G, or an A and an E. It exists without us knowing it, and we understand that it sounds good. And so have you ever been at a concert and heard a note and you just thought, that's perfect? Well, he believes that's what God is like. And in a faith community, we aspire to that, don't we? We aspire to be the kind of community that produces this wonderful symphony, that everything works how it should, and we all feel connected to one another. And we are grateful when that happens. We're grateful and we're happy. However, what about when discord comes? That note that isn't quite right. That note that makes us stand back and go, wait a second. What do we do with discord? My favorite quote from our Animate series is from the UCC minister video. It's Reverend Lillian Daniels. And she talks all the time. She's a pastor, and she talks to people. And a lot of times she'll hear people say, well, I don't go to church because I see God in the sunset. And her comment to that is, anyone can see God in the sunset. It's easy to sit alone on the top of a mountain and see God. It's much more miraculous to see God sitting in the pews next to people as annoying as we are. That's miraculously seeing God, isn't it? That when we see God in difficult moments, isn't that the truly transcendent miracle? That it's easy to see God in the perfect note, but it's much harder to see God when there's discord, when the note doesn't quite sound right. So I have a challenge for you today, a Thanksgiving challenge. It won't be too hard to figure out what it is. It is be grateful. There you go, I'm all done. No, I'm not done. Be grateful. Not for the good, for the easy, for the beautiful, for the helpful. My challenge for you today is to be grateful when there's discord and difficulty. Now, I'm not saying seek out difficulty, make your life more difficult so that you can be super grateful. But what I'm saying is, when some of the kids shared, I thought that was really funny. I grew up without brothers or sisters. But I imagine that for many of you, the difficult entanglements with your brothers and sisters have made you who you are. Have made you who you are. Because you had to resolve conflict in the midst of family. And so the difficult people in our lives, the difficult moments in our lives, especially the things we can't control, who our teachers are, what homework they give us. Okay, not many of you that. People are like, what? Your job, your boss, your coworkers, your neighbors, your family, those things that you can't choose, but those things in your life that are sometimes difficult, I challenge you to be grateful for those things. I want you to take out that sandpaper. Did you get a piece, I hope? I was so excited to find purple. So thrilling to me to find purple. I didn't get a very hard grade. There were grades. I was in Home Depot, and it was really laughable, because the guy's like, well, what are you doing with the sandpaper? And then I had to describe it. And he thought I was crazy. So I want you to think about, with this piece of sandpaper, I want you to think about the people or situations in your life where you find yourself right now. And those people, they could be a boss, like I said, a coworker, a family member, a church member, a neighbor. Whatever it is, the presence that they have in your life or the situation that's in your life makes things more rough, makes things more difficult. It causes friction. It brings discord. And I want you to think about that friction and discord as you feel the roughness. The roughness. Now, I wouldn't advise you to put on your glass. I mean, this is, you don't need to like sand anything. But it's helpful to have this sort of physical kind of understanding of what we're talking about. Because I want you to actually look at that sandpaper and think about that sandpaper and that situation, that person, that moment that's been difficult or rough for you to deal with. And I want you to remember what the kids learned and knew already when we were up here earlier, that sandpaper is for what? It's to smooth the edges. It's to make things beautiful. It's to help out a craft project. Sandpaper smooths out the rough edges of life. And that we need to be grateful. And you realize that if you are human and you are in community, you are someone else's sandpaper. And you may not even know it. Just saying. And so my challenge to you is to take this with you this week, and when you think about that situation or person, I want you to be grateful, to think good thoughts about that, to change your attitude and your mind about it. Because the difficult things in life may be able to be used to the glory of God. Don't hear me saying that God makes bad things happen so that we're better people. We all know that bad things just what? Happen. And my request to you, my challenge to you, is that you think about those difficult bad things in a new way and be grateful that they're making you the person that you're supposed to be, that God's not done with you yet. I don't care how old you are or how young you are. You can still change your attitude about difficult situations and difficult people. And you can rise above it and learn and understand who God is making you to be. Be grateful. Now, Paul, one of the authors of the New Testament, who wrote quite a bit of the New Testament, writes this in 2 Corinthians. He says, all this, and he means all this trial and tribulation, is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And Paul, not unlike Desmond Tutu, both men who challenge us to be grateful, struggled and had difficulties in their journey. Paul gives his staggering list of his all this. It says he was beaten, in danger of death, sharing the gospel. He received 39 lashes 5 times. He was beaten with rods. He was stoned. He was shipwrecked. He was in danger in rivers, danger from robbers, danger from countrymen, danger from Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness. Okay, we get it, Paul. He suffered danger and difficulty, and yet his call to us is to be grateful. Because whatever light and momentary troubles that we are experiencing, there's something greater going on. There's a greater purpose that we can tap into, that transcendent moment that reminds us that the scratchiness of life is smoothing out our rough edges. So my challenge is to be grateful for the good and the difficult. To be grateful for the good is easy. To be grateful for difficulty is difficult. The trials, the people who push our buttons, those who don't think exactly how we do this political season. But we want to transcend that. We want that eternal glory that comes from being buffed by the roughness of life. And so we are thankful. And my challenge to you is to be grateful in all things for the glory of God and the goodness of the life that you have still to come. Amen.